If you voted for Trump in this last election, Ben, I got to know, how long will you put up with him and his administration constantly lying to you? We're not even talking about how they're hurting you. They're just how they're lying to you. You know they are. Does it bother you? Does it bother you when Trump says that there's no inflation? When you know that you have to keep paying more because of his tariffs and his disastrous trade policies? Because the few trolls who still defend Trump with Russian propaganda say that the voting majority have spoken. But this is not what they voted for. I wonder how many people who voted for Trump in 2024 would vote the other way if we held that election again today. And 15 million people who didn't vote back then would today, but not for him. Because he lies so much, and his lies are damaging. Trump promised to lower prices on day one. Instead, he raised them on practically everything across the board with his insane tariff war, charging you extra for every import, while he estranged us from all of our allies and visibly weakened us before our enemies, whom Trump thought were his friends. Trump recently bragged that he lowered prescription drug prices, but he failed at that too, which may be a good thing because Trump isn't going to penalize the pharmaceutical industry for price gouging because he's one of the corporate fat cats himself. He's not one of us. So the way that he planned to lower prices in America was by raising prices in Europe, and he said he would force them to pay more by applying even more tariffs, which would have increased the cost on imported goods to Americans even more than existing tariffs have already done. His tariffs have cost us foreign investments and weakened the dollar so much that it's in danger of being replaced as the world standard currency. The majority voted for Trump's promise of a better economy, not this one, not the one we got, not the one that he shattered. Because Trump said that if we vote for Kamala, then there would be more war and the economy would crash. When we know that her economic plan was actually a really good one, and that Trump crashed the economy stupidly, unnecessarily, just like all the economists back then said that his tariffs would do. While he is also murdering innocent foreigners in international waters just because he calls them narco-terrorists without any evidence of that, because they are just innocent fishermen. We suspect that he's doing that to prompt another war because he wants Venezuela's oil. Regarding the rest of the world, Trump has once again turned his back on our allies, estranged us from even our best friends, and tried to make friends with our enemies, which didn't work because Putin was just manipulating Trump all along, and Trump was too stupid to see it until Putin didn't need him anymore. Lest we forget, Trump deliberately and illegally stole classified documents and then tried to hide them from federal investigators. He emptied some of those folders, and we know that he uploaded our secrets, sharing them with no one knows who, probably Putin. If he cared about Americans, would he expose us like that? Now Trump is claiming credit for peace talks in the Middle East. But earlier he told Netanyahu to finish the job of genocide in Gaza. Remember when Trump bragged that he would bulldoze the whole place and put up one of his resorts in its stead? And that was before he was informed of just how unpopular a genocidal Israel is. It's not just the leftists who are upset about that. Everybody's upset at genocide. But before Trump figured that out, or someone told him that, Trump told Netanyahu to keep going with their attacks on Iran. And Iran is only a threat now because Trump broke our nuclear deal with them. No one but a bully would vote for immigrations and customs enforcement to become a Gestapo, violating human rights indefensibly every day at a cost of more than $50 million a day, day after day. And that's before we even consider how Trump's jackbooted thugs single-handedly killed the incentive for international tourists to visit the U.S. And make no mistake, Trump's tax cuts, the things what he is most proud of and happy about, they cost us everything. And they benefit no one but the super rich, like himself. Because Trump has never done anything for anybody that didn't benefit himself first and foremost. And that doesn't justify him putting the burden onto the already overworked backs of the poor and diminishing middle class, because you're paying their bill so that they can buy another super yacht every year while you can't afford food or medicine, because they're robbing you, funding their tax cuts by cutting millions off of Medicaid and denying another 400,000 their Social Security income that they paid for and should be entitled to. But Republicans don't care about little people like you. We are no longer the richest and most powerful nation because Trump broke us. The cost of living is up this year over the last couple of years, and consumer price index is up too. He promised to cut spending, but he actually spent over $200 billion more just in the first 100 days of his term than Biden spent all last year. The federal deficit is now an estimated $2 trillion. At the same time, the Trump administration is trying to hide a record bad jobs report. And they've canceled NOAA, so that we'll never know how much damage he's doing to the environment. And you know he's doing everything he can to damage the environment. Trump said that he didn't know anything about Project 2025, and he promised not to enact it. But that was actually the one thing he really did do on day one, because he now admits, because why not? And now it's safe to admit that that was always his primary platform. Just 9 months in, and half of it is already complete. Nobody voted to have their rights taken away, disregarding the Constitution. Nobody wants the authoritarian theocracy that Project 2025 promises to be. Trump lied to us. Half the country bought it and voted against your own interests. You voted for party over country because you believed a pathological liar and an adjudicated fraud who was dangerously incompetent and militant in his hateful bigotry. When are you going to get mad at him for lying to you about everything all the time? Especially when every lie comes at a greater cost to you. Trump said that Ukraine started Russia's unprovoked invasion of their country. Everyone knows that's a lie. Trump said that because he wants our enemies to win, and he wants our allies in NATO to lose. Trump brought the military into Los Angeles, Portland, Chicago, and D.C., not because they're all hellholes like he said, because they're not. None of them are. He did it because they are blue cities. And he thinks that if he can unleash a hostile mob of armed thugs into a crowd, that he can stoke a violent reaction, which is what he needs. He needs to start a riot so that he can call an insurrection, which would allow him to declare martial law and thus suspend the elections so that he may remain dictator for life. And Trump says that Portland is burning to the ground, but we all know it isn't. You know it isn't. And you know that he knows that it isn't. But his strategy is to just keep telling the same lies, even when everyone knows it's a lie. Because he thinks that if he keeps lying and never admits it, even after it's proved, then some people will still be stupid enough to believe him. But even his own base is now realizing that it is all a lie, that he and his ignorant, prejudiced, paranoid policies are the fault of our downfall, not the innocent immigrants whom he is illegally and unconstitutionally terrorizing at your expense. Remember, if he can do it to them, he can do it to you, without due process. We are not a free country anymore. Go ahead and sing, "I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know that I better keep my mouth shut or else I'll be labeled a terrorist and disappeared to a gulag in El Salvador." Is that what you voted for? He blamed Democrats for the government shutdown. The Speaker, Mike Johnson, even said,
"Well, let me look right into the camera and tell you very clearly, Republicans are the ones concerned about health care. Republicans are the party working around the clock every day to fix health care."
If that were so, then why is it that after a decade of Trump promising to come up with a better plan than the ACA, what has he got?
I have concepts of a plan.
That's why we're still on Obamacare, because Trump and Mike Johnson are both liars. Republicans are never going to come up with a better health care system. They work for the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies, for corporations and oligarchs, not the workers, not the people. That's why he is deunionizing workers, to make the working class even weaker. He owns all three branches of federal government. Otherwise, he would be impeached for a third time and be imprisoned by now out of respect for the common good. America is an oligarchy now. And Trump said that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose any votes. Then the Supreme Court stupidly gave him the power to do just that. And the thing is that Trump's base doesn't care about his immorality. They don't care about his part in trafficking girls from his Miss Teen USA pageant to his private clubs to Epstein's parties. Remember how he bragged about being allowed to bust into their dressing rooms to catch underage minors naked? Remember also that he's an adjudicated rapist. Trump supporters don't seem to care about any of that. So I have to wonder whether Trump would lose any of his sycophants if he molested children on Fifth Avenue. MAGA Republicans complain that whenever they see a woman or a black person doing a job that they say should be done better by a man, then they dismiss everyone else as just a DEI hire. But what's funny about that is that every one of Trump's cabinet, the ones he picked himself, are all grossly unqualified, particularly for those positions, and they're incompetent for any position. Trump's goal is to tear everything down and build it back up in his image, to glorify him alone, at your expense, while you learn to cower before him. The thing is, you know that Trump is lying to you about everything, all the time. When are you going to be offended at being duped by a professional con man? When are you going to realize how supporting him only hurts you and everyone else you care about? Even Marjorie Taylor Greene is starting to figure this out. Trump accuses liberals and moderate conservatives of being radical leftists, not because he thinks that's true, but because he is trying to divide us against ourselves so that he can use you to gain power over you. That's why he declared Antifa to be a terrorist organization. It's not an organization, and therefore doesn't have any members, and he knows that. But he points to unnamed crowds and calls them Antifa because he needs to create the illusion of an imaginary enemy in order to rally his base. And he gets away with all of this because Americans have been so conditioned by media propaganda to vote for jingoism rather than evaluate actual policy options. I said this in a recent video, but it bears repeating, that American politics is not as simple as many Americans imagine. It's not a binary choice, as if you're either far right or you're a right-wing extremist. No, there's a linear graph of intermediate positions between those extremes, and that's where most of us are. There's another dimension to that too, an arguably more important one between authoritarian and libertarian. And I'm not talking about the Libertarian Party, which is exclusively right-wing. I'm talking about the up and down axis, where being libertarian means being anti-authoritarian. This two-dimensional concept creates a checkerboard of different political groups between those who want more government control of everything versus those who would rather just be left alone, between those who serve only corporate interests and those who support workers in labor unions. And thus far, the vast majority of American politicians are and have been on the authoritarian right quadrant of the political compass, whereas most citizens tend to be in the libertarian left quadrant, the one that wants more rights and less government with a higher quality of life in a cleaner environment. Remember when Reagan argued that the Republican position should be one of small government? And ever since then, Republicans keep falsely accusing me of worshiping the state, which I never did. I think government has some responsibility for national defense and a few other protections and provisions, but that we should keep it at a minimum. Yes, most leftists actually want substantially less government than the GOP is currently pushing. Republicans now want so much government that it digitally examines all your personal information and surveils all your private activities, which may become criminal activities if they get to make all the laws they're trying to do now. They're already making lists of what kind of person you are and what you look at online to find out what sort of subversive threat you might potentially become. There may be a third dimension to this political compass, one contrasting liberals and conservatives. So there's even more depth of positions to consider if you're studying political science. But for most of us, living in what has been designed to be a two-party system with no options like ranked choice voting or approval voting, then existing laws in some states pretty much force us into one of only two choices. which we typically see as between right-wing conservative authoritarian Republicans or slightly more left-leaning libertarian liberal Democrats. Thus far, every president in my lifetime has been a right-wing conservative authoritarian to one degree or another, regardless whether they were Democrat or Republican. The Republican Party used to be the Liberal Party back when I was a child, but they were never on the left. Neither has the Democratic Party ever been on the left. They used to be on the far right. But given how far the GOP has moved to the right now, many Dems realize that they have to move in the opposite direction, not just to the left, but to the libertarian left, being diametrically opposed. You almost certainly understand that libertarian means less government, and that doesn't necessarily mean no government. Most of us understand that we need some, and many people understand the contrast between liberal and conservative pretty well. But not many Americans understand what it means to be on the left, nor on the right for that matter. We are not necessarily talking about communism or Marxism or not even socialism, though we would like to see strong social programs in a mixed economy. Well, like much of what Europe has now, which makes it better to live there now than here. The left is typified by prioritizing environmental concerns and human rights, particularly among the working class, while the right seeks to exploit workers and deplete resources for profit while denying the rights of the people, ultimately serving only corporations and oligarchs. I know that's not how they describe themselves, but actions speak louder than words, don't they? They'll tell you that they're not really doing all these things that we can see them doing. Just like when Trump says that Portland is a war-torn hellhole burning to the ground, even though we can all see that it's not. Have you read 1984? Because that's where we are now. In an oversimplified caricature of our political choices, in an attempt to keep it simple, stupid, then the Democratic Party has become more representative of libertarian leftists and liberals. There are still a lot of old conservatives in there, but they've only shown us how to lose by not doing what they should. Thus, they're being replaced by younger, smarter, more progressive performers, because we all blew it in this last election. If we get another one, another fair election like we had in 2020, if that is still possible, then we owe it to ourselves and to everyone else to reevaluate, undo what we did in 2024. Put away past prejudice and look at what's happening. How can we fix this before it gets any worse? And let me simplify this even further. The Democratic Party isn't really left, but it is the leftmost. That's where most of the leftists are, or at least how they have to vote in this system. Leftists would be insane or stupid to vote Republican. And Jill Stein is only looking out for Jill Stein. She's another friend of Putin's, and she's only a spoiler vote. If you vote for her, then the better candidate loses and the greater evil wins again. How many times are we going to have to repeat that before we notice the pattern? So we have no choice until we get ranked choice voting or approval voting or something like that. The system as it is right now, we have to vote Dem if we want to back left-wing policies. And what are those? Well, if you believe that the working class must have affordable health care or else they'll just die in abject poverty, then you should vote left. Because ever since Reagan signed a law allowing even illegal immigrants emergency medical services, 911 calls, and that's the only thing they get. But ever since then, Republicans have only ever worked for the insurance companies and against the common people, trying to take even that away. The government is shut down right now because Republicans lied about Obamacare providing benefits to illegal immigrants. It doesn't. They know it doesn't. What they want is for those subsidies to expire so that Obamacare becomes too expensive to exist, so that you are now dependent. You can only get insurance from your employer. And the only reason I was able to work from home and be my own boss while raising kids is because of Obamacare. Because the left provides and protects human rights and gives us workable options, while the right only tries to restrict or deny all of that so that you don't have any rights at all anymore. If you believe what the Constitution says, that everyone is equal and that we all have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, even people who are not necessarily white or right-wing or straight or binary or Christian, then you can't vote Republican because they're against all of that, especially the First Amendment, and I mean every provision therein. For example, if you believe in freedom of speech, then you may as well believe in Santa Claus because we don't have that anymore.
We took the freedom of speech away because that's been through the courts, and the courts said you have freedom of speech. But what has happened is when they burn a flag, it agitates and irritates crowds. They've never seen anything like it on both sides, and you end up with riots. So we're going on that basis. We're looking at it not from the freedom of speech, which I always felt strongly about, but never passed the courts.
Now you can be arrested for criticizing your government. That was a right that the founders were determined to protect because it was necessary in order to oppose tyranny. But now that right is gone because we are under a tyrant again. If you want to get that right back, and we are able to vote for it, then you're going to have to vote Dem, assuming we ever get to vote again. If you believe in bodily autonomy, that's a right women used to have, but they don't anymore. And some Republicans said that they want to take away women's right to vote, too, so that may be on the chopping block next. If you want women to have those rights, you're going to have to vote left or Dem. If you believe in freedom of religion, but only for Christians, and then not even all Christians, just true Christians, whatever you think that is, then you'll probably vote Republican, and you'll suffer the consequences when that comes back to bite you in the end, when Project 2025 enforces theocracy like they plan to do. But if you believe as I do, that what or whether you do or don't believe shouldn't matter, neither to employers nor vendors, nor when buying or renting a home, then you would be smart to vote Dem, and you'd be stupid to vote Republican. The Texas Republican Party platform said they want to harvest all biological and mineralogical resources in the Gulf, as if there's no future beyond the next fiscal quarter. Other states want to do the same with their natural resources, including mining and fracking national parks and increasing the take on already over-abused commercial fishing areas, where they send in more fishing boats every year, but they bring back less fish collectively because they're fishing the oceans to death. If you think that such an industrial assault against the environment is grotesquely irresponsible and myopic, then you have to vote Dem, because voting Republican is literally voting for the end of your world, your livelihood, your freedom, and your future in one sense or another. Those who want to provide, preserve, and protect human rights and who care about people and the environment do not also need a calloused faction who hate foreigners and even hate compassion itself, wokeness, wanting to take everyone's rights away. Nor do we need those who want to rape the environment and deplete all available resources for profit as if there is no future, because then there won't be. If you voted Republican last time, you should have seen all this coming. We did. We tried to warn you. And we will be lucky if we get another chance to undo that mistake. Ironically, being on the left politically means being on the right side of history and humanity. Meanwhile, the right is just wrong, like in every way and about everything. Ultimately, if you're interested in human rights, quality of life, and environmental issues, then you have to vote left or Dem, because Republicans are against all of that. They're even against you having a vote at all. So if you ever do get another shot at this, you better make it count. Take away their power and empower someone else progressive enough to fix this.